Welcome, everybody, to the City of Farmers Branch Council meeting for Tuesday, February 6th. Our first item of business will be to our invocation and pledge, which will be led by Councilman Jackson.
Please stand. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the privilege of being here tonight and conducting the business of our city on behalf of all our wonderful residents. We come to you with thankful and grateful hearts and ask that you inspire our words and our thoughts tonight, this evening. In gracious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Now the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
So next up is our ceremonial items for the state bank. Item E1 is a presentation of an award to the Parish Episcopal Panthers Division I title football team for the 5th consecutive year. Come on. Okay, so the City of Farmers Branch emphasizes and recognizes schools' vital role in the success of our city and the community. The Parish Episcopal Schools Midway campus, located right off Midway Road, serves over 750 students and is home to the Panther Athletics. Again this year, the Parish Episcopal School Panthers football program has defended its state title, and they beat Houston St. Thomas 40-29 in doing so, securing their 5th straight state title. So the Parish Episcopal won the state championship in the highest classification in the Texas Association of Private and Association of Private and Parochial Schools, TAPS. This success resonates with the athletic philosophy at Parish Episcopal to further the school's mission of using athletics to build future leaders with an emphasis on excellence and a focus on academics, athletics, student-athlete welfare, diversity, equity, advocacy, and school relations. Tonight, we recognize the time, energy, and talents of the champion Parish Episcopal Panthers and their sacrifices made to get to this point. So, Coach, we have our official city challenge coin, which I'm going to give you. There's a whole bag.
Awesome.
One for all your players and one for all your coaches.
Thank you.
And then this is a special coin. Congratulations, go Panthers,
All right.
from the City of Farmers Branch.
Thank you.
And we have this football, which says 5 Pete, state champions.
Oh, there you go. Very cool. Thank you.
that's for you. Would you like to say a few
Yeah,
words?
sure. Why not? We're here, right? May as well say something. We want to thank everybody for having us out. It's kind of the running joke. It's become a yearly tradition, but I want to recognize the players and the coaches, Coach Galusha that's here, for their accomplishments this year. It's truly remarkable to win 5 straight state championships. I think it's happened twice in the history of Texas high school football at any level, whether that's 6-man or 11-man or what have you. So this accomplishment is really unbelievable and something that hasn't been done before. And so we're certainly proud of these guys. Also want to thank the city for having us out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, while we're here, I want to introduce you guys to our new athletic director, Greg Zugrave. Also our head of school, Dr. Rush. Come on up here, Dr. Rush. We're going to give the mayor a little present here. I don't know if you guys have met them yet, but they're both new. We brought you a token of our appreciation. Mr. Mayor, I'll let Dr. Rush give it to you instead of me.
Okay.
Y'all can meet each other too.
Doctor,
How are
nice
you,
to meet you. I'm Terry Land.
Thank you for having us. I'll echo, obviously, what Coach Novikov has done at Parrish is unbelievable. I know the boys love playing for him, and it's something special at our school, and obviously to be in Farmers Branch. For me, to come back to Farmers Branch and be a part of the school and a part of this program, I'm really excited to work with Daniel, these awesome young men, and Coach Zugrave. So on behalf of Parrish, here's a
Well,
gift
thank
for
you.
you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's get a photo. with
Yeah, that's what we
everybody.
need. That's what we really need to do is get a photo with everybody. Where's the best place?
You need to hold this.
We're gonna hold the ball too, right?
Some of y'all get up on the top. Up there. Well, if y'all can get on sort of like this side of the podium, so we
Come on
don't
this
get
side, guys.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor's gotta get, he's gotta get the bill here.
Okay.
That's not okay. One more. Don't deny it.
Any more parents? Parents on this? Thank you so much. Thank y'all. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Coins to give
All right. We'll see y'all same place next year, same time.
Thank you all. Congratulations. So next up will be our items of community interest.
That's right. Thank you, Mayor. Items of community interest for this council meeting of February 6th, 2023. Did you know that Farmers Branch was named one of the top 10 most bikeable cities in Texas? Residential real estate company Redfin released the list last week. We ranked just ahead of Houston. Find the full article on our website at farmersbranchtx.gov. Our City Council has a strategic planning session scheduled this Thursday, February 8th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Manskey Public Library. The public is welcomed. The council will hear reports from various departments and develop a set of priorities for the year ahead to help guide the budget planning process. And we're still welcoming potential vendors and performers for Gateway to the Globe, our city's first ever multicultural celebration on Saturday, March 23rd from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Historical Park. It's being designed to promote the traditions and cultures of residents of Farmers Branch and North Texas. Potential vendors can learn more at fbspecialevents.com. Farmers Branch voters will likely have several municipal projects to consider on the May ballot, all of which would be funded by municipal bonds, dependent on certain decisions being made tonight. There are town halls scheduled to explain the proposals on February 13th, March 12th, and April 9th. Find more details on the homepage at farmersbranchtx.gov. Are you considering a run for office to join our council? Candidate filing for the May 4th city election continues through February 16th. Seats for council districts 3 and 5 will be on the ballot. Candidate packets are still available in the city secretary's office and on the elections page of the city website. Call 972-919-2503 for more details. Join us at Barneywood Bark Park on February 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. for a positively awesome event where your furry friends can celebrate the season of love. We'll have treats and refreshments available for purchase for both pups and humans, a photo booth for capturing those adorable moments, and dog-friendly vendors. The Hoya Playground at Orengood Park has proven to be very popular, so much so that the city has added more security measures, including increased evening police patrols and no parking signs where needed. Additional security cameras and fencing are also being considered. And the next time you stop by Mansky Library, you may see a new face in the director's office. She is Heather Fuller, an accomplished librarian with experience in language learning databases and mobile bookmobile service. She's also a longstanding member of the Texas Library Association, so be sure to say hello. Do you compost? If not, would you consider it? Our sustainability team has developed a short 4-question survey to help understand what prevents residents from composting on a regular basis. Please take the survey. It's on our homepage at farmersbranchtx.gov. And as always, you can sign up for City e-News at the same website, farmersbranchtx.gov. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Brady. So next up is our report on study session items. We had our City Council study session this afternoon, started at 4 o'clock, and we heard about a couple of items. One was a presentation regarding Planning and Zoning Commission's work from last year and what all they've been involved with. And then we had discussion regarding the proposed 2024 bond election. We did not finish that discussion, nor did we finish the study session agenda. So after our meeting here, we will finish study session and we'll stay down here. But as a result of not having, I guess, complete discussion on study session item A3, which affects a consent agenda item H5, we are moving H5 to the regular agenda items, and that will be item J1. So H5 on consent agenda will become item J1. Next up, I only have one person signed up to speak, citizen comment, so I'm going to have that at this time, and that is William Glancy.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'd like to spend a lot of time complimenting you on all the job I think you're doing. All the barometers that I look at in the city seem to be going in the right direction. Our property values are going way up and economic development is doing well. I think Allison and her group's doing a great job, and I think the city is really moving forward. I can convert to what we had back in the early 80s development, and we just got to keep the ball rolling. But that's not what I come to you tonight. And I'll talk to you about something, and it's really not directed as much at the council and at the staff as to the citizens of our community. I just got my my bill for my auto insurance, and it went up 146% last year. I paid last year, I think it was $1,374. This year, it's $3,374. Same car, no accidents, no tickets, nothing's changed. About 5 or 6 years ago, I think I was paying $700 or $800. I mean, the insurance companies make us go out and shop every year and change policies. You know, at first I had insurance, I guess, for the same carrier for 50 years. In the last 5 or 6 years, I've had a different carrier every year. And you go out and shop and you knock a few dollars off of it. But my point is, back in 2008, 9, and 10, the city of Farmers Branch put a real concerted effort into apprehending people who did not have insurance. And when we stopped them, and if they didn't have insurance, their car was impounded. And it really made a difference. Chief told me at the time, uninsured accidents in Farmers Branch dropped 75%. Our stops for DWI, almost everything we had in the city went down dramatically. Now, you know, I understand officers need to have some latitude about what they're doing. If somebody's taking their child to a doctor or hospital or something like that, we don't need to be taking the car away from them. But most of the time, these people are just driving around. This is another side effect of illegal immigration, because they can't legally buy insurance. They don't have a driver's license. They don't have the other things. But I think we need to really clamp down on this. Now, the point I want to make to the citizens is, when we did that, we were called mean-spirited. Lots of things have happened. But I think it can be just as mean-spirited if a person in this community has to end up on fixed income, deciding whether to pay for auto insurance or buy their food for their medicine. That's pretty mean-spirited too, and if we can do something about it. And when you go apply for insurance, they ask you your zip code, so it is somewhat what happens locally has an effect on what happens with the cost of your insurance. And, you know I've sat over there and I hear people complain to us about lowering the tax rate and saving them $50 on their tax bill, but yet I'm going to pay for that car, that particular car I'm talking about. I drive that car 3,000 miles a year. That's over $1 a mile for insurance. And this is ridiculous. I think we need to go after insurance companies. I mean, obviously, all of this isn't directly on cost of insurance, and they disguise it because they end up telling you, well, it's $200 or $300 uninsured motor. If you don't have collision on that car and somebody hits your car, you're out of luck, because they are not going to take up the banner for you. And so the collision insurance is generally over half the cost of the premium, and it's designed around the fact that people do not have insurance, they're going to hit your car. And so I think we need to do that. And, you know, we've got an excellent chief right now, and I think he'll do what, whatever he knows good law practices are, and the state will allow us to do. But I think we really need to put more effort into do that. And I think the citizens need to stand up and say, that's what we want done. And I think, we maybe get called names, remember that, but I think the reality of it is it makes us a safer city and do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anybody else signed up to speak for citizens' comments, so next up will be our consent agenda. And as I mentioned, item H5 is moving to regular agenda item. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item H5, which will be J1.
Mayor, recognizing item H5 has been moved to regular agenda, I motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you.
I actually have a question.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
So-
So I know that we had some residents who participated in the Charter Review Committee, and I think even from last year, who had come to speak about some concerns they had with the way that Dallas County Elections was administering the elections. And so I think it's important for residents to know the progress we're making in addressing this issue. Ben, would you mind kind of summarizing the steps that we've taken? And I think there's a meeting set up with the Mr. Scapello's replacement.
Yes, Councilman Roman. So we have met with the residents that had those concerns, had a meeting with my city secretary, director of administrative services, talked through those concerns to make sure we understood what they were. And then now we have a meeting set Friday with Dallas County Elections Administrator Hyder Garcia to review those and see if we can make meaningful progress on some of those concerns. So we're starting that conversation based on the feedback from the residents with their concerns over the election process.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Mr. Scapello's replacement is a bit more amenable and open to potential a discussion about some changes in the way that they administer this election.
By all accounts, he seems very open. The meeting being set quickly is also a good sign, but at least hearing the concerns. And so that's what we're hopeful for.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Very good. So I will start again and re-entertain the motion to approve.
Omar, are you okay if we second the motion for the consent? Okay. Mayor, I'll go ahead and second the motion
Okay,
for consent.
thank you. So we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda for all items except H5, which is being moved.
Yeah, it went away.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next up will be regular agenda items, and item J1, consider adopting ordinance 3849, calling a special bond election to be held on May 4th, 2024, making provisions for the conduct of the election and authorizing the city manager to execute an election services contract with Dallas County Elections Department and take appropriate action.
Mayor, if I may, just to give some context on why we now have a regular agenda item when we didn't before. So this is an item marked for action to call for an election of the bond proposal. This was a study session item, item A3, and the mayor has made a proposal to change the structure of the bond proposal. There were 5 areas that the bond was going to be allocated among, and the mayor has proposed that we change that to 3 with various amounts assigned to each other. So council engaged in discussion of the study session item. We were unable to finish the discussion upstairs, and so I thought it might be a good idea to bring it downstairs, continue the discussion, because the latest date in which we can call this election is February 16th. Is that correct? So we have a limit. We have 10 days left in order to decide if we're in agreement with the proposal as is or revised in some other way. And so this really needs to be acted on tonight. And so that we've brought it downstairs for open discussion.
So let me just sort of recap a portion of our discussion that we had upstairs. I put something out for consideration of the council. As you know, the mayor doesn't vote, but I have the benefit of giving my 2-cent opinion. And so after talking with many folks at the State of the City, at Bond Town Hall, and also some other resident meetings that were held in the city, I get the sense that there are a couple of items that folks are not going to be in favor of. And, you know, last thing I want to do, in my mind, is put something forward that is going to get voted down. So we won't bring things forward that we are going to pass, but it's important that citizens get to vote on items and that your voice be heard. But with that in mind, and based on what I heard from these meetings, I thought it was necessary to suggest to council considering reallocating the $8 million of the bond to the following: increasing funding for the neighborhood revitalization or Renaissance program and the demo rebuild by $2 million instead of the money going to the Trails bond. I believe if we waited, it would be better if we waited until there's grant money from either the county or the city, and then take advantage of those matching funds to put towards trails. And all of this I said upstairs, so this is nothing new. Increasing the water infrastructure improvements by $1.5 million instead of the Squire Park bond. Again, I believe that we can get to the Squire Park improvements through the city budget, and we can work that funding back in through the 24-25 budget process, which we will be starting shortly. One of the things to keep in mind is if you put forth a bond, and as it stood, all of the items, there were 5 items that the council had been discussing. If you put those items up, and if anyone fails, well, you can't bring that up again for 3 years. In addition, the optics of an item failing and then council trying to circumvent that process by trying to take money in the city budget and approve it for something that was voted down by the residents, and you have a situation that's very similar to what happened with the library a few years back. Voters voted down a library, the council, 4 members of council said, okay, we're going to approve $10 million and circumvent the process. And that was stopped by a citizen-led petition. That was not very good. Didn't do our city any favors. So you just need to be aware of that. And that's been in the back of my mind this whole time, is what if something's voted down and then council says, well, we want to approve money to do this anyway. Not a very good optic. That's not listening. So we had some very good discussion upstairs, and I'm hopeful Councilman Roman will reiterate some of the points that he brought up. I'm sure he will. But I think the discussion is good, and I really wanted us to have a robust discussion about this. I believe that the Neighborhood Renaissance Program, which was put in motion a number of years back, is still viable and still providing benefits to our city, very high return benefits, as is the Demo Rebuild Program. We're investing back in the city. And when you think about our housing stock in the city, 80% of the homes in Farmers Branch are over 50 years old. Many are over 60. And so that's 60-year-old foundations, that's 60-year-old sewers. And we have an opportunity to affect a little bit of change, but not at a very fast pace. But the change that we make is very noticeable. The change that we make is going to take decades to make a real impact on some of the target areas that are in the Neighborhood Renaissance area. Demo Rebuild is strong, it's robust, we've got people taking advantage of that program, and again, that's just a small incentive to get people to invest in Farmers Branch. Neighborhood revitalization is, I think, in my mind, what's going to pay huge dividends to our city. And we didn't do this upstairs, but I'd like to call on Allison Cook, our Director of Economic Development, who oversees the Demo Rebuild and the Neighborhood Renaissance Program, to come up and answer a couple questions.
Allison Cook.
Thank you. So can you tell us approximately when the Neighborhood Renaissance Program started? Well, and before that, speak to the difference between Neighborhood Renaissance or revitalization and demo rebuild.
Okay. The demo rebuild program started, to my knowledge, in 2009. And to date, we have 132 process applications. Many in the past, I would say that probably the last 15 that we've processed are still in permit review or about to break ground. So we don't have 132 homes right this second, but we have 132 approved applications. The Neighborhood Renaissance Program was started in the 90s, and it was a program that I wasn't here then, but I believe the city purchased 10 lots in Branch Crossing. And then they paused the program, and they sold to a builder. And they paused the program, and they picked it back up around the time of demo rebuild, which was 2009, 2010. So I got here in December 2011, and we had purchased 3 lots at that point. And so since then, we've included money in the budget each year to continue both programs. The Neighborhood Renaissance, where now owners call us, as we know we use a broker, and people call us when sometimes it's an estate. It might be a vacant property. There might be a problem with the property that is too expensive to fix, kind of an obsolete structure. So we will get calls on that to make an offer on their home. So we don't always scour MLS looking for, what's for sale this week. We look for opportunities because of our limited budget. So both have been going on equidistant amount of time, with the Renaissance starting for a bit in the 90s and pausing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so as part of the Renaissance Program, we have individuals who have approached the city to buy lots. And I know we've approved, the council has to approve those sales, and we have in some instances. You still maintain some lots, but then we also recently sold 5 of those lots to Builders of Hope.
Correct.
And would you speak to what Builders of Hope plans to do?
Yes, they plan to do what we asked them to do. We went and found them. So we own almost 20 lots in a particular area that we paused any sales. We had a sale in the target area years ago, and a 2-story house went up. And that's when we realized in a lower value pocket area, we could be gentrifying if we just allowed any large, as was referred to as McMansions. That's kind of what it is, right? So we paused and we came up with a strategy, and we came up with finding a partner that could build in a certain price point and a certain square footage, which helped not gentrify the area. So that's why we had the inventory. That's why we've held on to it. It's atypical for a city to do that, but when we saw what was happening, we knew we had to step in and stop and create a plan. So we've sold 5 lots to Builders of Hope. We designed each of these homes, and they're under 1,900 square feet on purpose because Dallas County Appraisal District will look at the square footage when they place a value on a home. When it's a new home and it's 3,000 square feet, they don't care what street it's on. They're going to place a value on the improvement. And so those are the important things for that particular area for only the city-owned lots. The public sector, private sector, they do whatever they want. So just for the city-owned lots. That was the program, and that's the one we're working right now. So this spring, as we know, it will kick off the first 5 lots. And we're one of the first cities, I think, in Texas to do this. So that's in essence the target area and why it became the target area. Outside the target area, there are no metrics of the home you can build. The proposals come to the city council of a city-owned lot, and I present all the offers to the council historically, and the council can weigh the offer that they choose.
Okay. I think it's important to note that we have a strategy retreat coming up later this week, and I'm sure this discussion will work its way into that. But with Neighborhood Renaissance going back to the 90s, that is multiple councils that set a course of direction for the city and said, this is important. We want to try to affect change. We want to try to upgrade our housing stock. We want to try to improve the opportunities for folks to live in better homes. and make the city better, improve people's quality of life.
Correct.
And that is sort of the mantra, the working guidelines that you've been following for these many years.
You know, y'all give me more money, I'll spend it. I'll say it right now. I say it all the time. But as far as demo rebuild or neighborhood renaissance, both have a measured return on investment that you can measure because you're measuring something that existed, which is called the improvement value on the appraisal district. And you're measuring an original improvement value, which is the house right this second standing somewhere. And then you tear it down, and then a year or two later, the appraisal district will come and they'll put a fully valued valuation, 100% of the value of the home, in other words, not half value when it's half under construction. So when you look at the completed value of the home and you look at the original improvement value of the home, not the land, we don't look at the land, that's when you'll see the incremental increase for year one for neighborhood renaissance. Neighborhood renaissance does not have this 7-year tax abatement program that's demo rebuild. So when you look at the neighborhood renaissance, year one, you start to get the incremental increase. And it might not be significant, probably can't change all your water lines in the city. But over time, let's say you do 20 of these around the city, and I have these metrics upstairs, so at any point I feel like I need to go and grab them. But I'll have them ready for the discussion Thursday. But all of that incremental increase of the revenue is an annual number. It's annually. It's not a one-time increase that we get. It's each year we get an increase. And the increase goes straight to the general fund. And so demo rebuild helps every single department. It helps the water department and streets and city secretary department. It helps every department. And so from there, the incremental increase for both of these programs, we measure it. I have the numbers, and it is significant dollars. But again, it wasn't started to provide a certain amount of dollars in future years. It was provided because we were a built-out city at the time. And what was told to me is in the 90s, we patterned it after a city that was built out outside Houston. And nothing was happening, and they felt passed over. And so they went in and I think bought 5 homes, tore them down. And that city now is a city where people want to move into. And it's not far from the Galleria, kind of like this city in Dallas, not far from the Galleria. So it was just built out, and suburbs to the north were being developed, and people were going to shiny and new. And we don't have a lot of land for redevelopment. We're just solely, for, brand new 50-acre tracts, like other communities. So it's just mainly been a redevelopment for different housing stock. I know Chairman Raley talked about the various housing stock that people look for in the missing middle. And it can be townhomes, it could be new home. It's a variety of answers. So this is our small way of making a difference for housing stock that has kind of run its natural course. It was built, as we talked about, in the 50s and 60s. I live in a home from the 50s. I had to renovate it, and it was super expensive. And it was just a renovation. So that's just kind of the way some of those homes are. And some really are too expensive to be renovated, as I've heard from people that have asked me to buy their homes.
And when was the last time that the city infused money into that program?
2017, we did a bond, and the voters voted for Neighborhood Renaissance and Demo Rebuild because they were together on a bond initiative. So they were paired together, and it passed, and each was infused with $2 million. And I would say Demo Rebuild, we have 500,000 up here. Historically, Demo Rebuild runs about 100,000 a year to fund, so we have contractual obligations for many years in the future.
Okay. I was made aware of a residential structure fire the other night, and so I looked up the address on DCAD. I wanted to see where the house was and what the value was, and what was interesting to me was the structure value. Structure value was $60,000. The lot was valued at $200,000.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, okay, why would these people ever attempt to rebuild their house? If you had more than $30,000 worth of damage, you need to raise the thing and take advantage of possibly one of our programs.
And it's very expensive.
Certainly the demo rebuild.
Sure, and maybe they'll get insurance money, but, for the average person, it's a big decision to build
It
a
is.
home. It's a big decision to tear your home down. It's a big decision to buy an older home, tear it down and build new. So that's why we get, on average, 10 to 15 applications each year for a city with almost 40,000 residents. So in no way are we, dramatically changing the city, because we have, I think, over 8,000 single-family structures, and we've done 132 applications. But for those that have the means to build a new home, or they're in a space where they need to build a new home because their home is functionally obsolete and they want to go get a loan, this is an option for them, the demo rebuild.
Okay.
The demo rebuild. But it's
Well,
not for everybody.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the info and you framing these programs. And these are long-term plays for the city.
Most definitely,
So,
most definitely.
okay. So I guess we can continue our discussion from upstairs. Councilman Roman?
I have some questions for you, Ellison. Can you tell me what the square footage is of the original square footage of the homes for Builders of Hope that we contracted with?
The original, you mean the one the city bought and tore down?
Yeah, I think we had a discussion at some point where we talked about reducing the square footage because there were some financial issues. What was the original
Oh.
square footage of that?
Oh, probably just a couple hundred more, so we didn't make a big swing. But originally this summer, I probably had some at 2,200 or 2,100, but we had to reduce them down because of cost and inflation.
Okay, so there were 2,200, 2,100.
The most, yeah.
If memory serves, the average square footage of that area is about 1,600. Is that a fair
That's
estimate?
certainly fair. Some of these are 900 square feet that we bought, but I would say 1,600 is pretty average, yeah.
So, carrying along with the logic that you've just indicated, which is that DCAD looks at, doesn't matter where you live, it looks at the square footage, right? And based off of the square footage, they assess the value, right? So, if logic follows, then a home that has more square footage than the average square footage of the homes in the area is going to eventually bring the price, the value up of the other homes around it, when you look at comps.
The DCAD will use excellent, good, fair, poor in 4 categories when they assess a structure for the valuation. And so a new home typically gets excellent, unless it's built really bad. But, and then an older home that's falling down, I mean, we've had roofs fall in and hoarders and all sorts of things you would never imagine. I would say that probably is in the poor category or fair. So those are 4 categories when they can only look from the street, they're not going in. And so that's how they assess, it's the square footage and it's the condition that they see.
Okay, so if the square footage is higher, the condition of the home is brand new.
Yep.
And receives an excellent rating, that means that the value of that property is going to be higher than any of its adjacent properties.
The improvement value.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So a
I'm
35,
assuming there's some connected increase to the neighboring properties as this program continues.
well, your existing home is still on its own. So my neighbor built a new house and I'm not penalized. I still have my valuation, which is fantastic. Hope DCAD's not watching. And it's great. So my home is different because it's an original structure. Their home is brand new and our taxes are night and day, but our land value is the same. So on a street where you mainly have 60 by 120s, which I would say is a fair average for the lots, the inline lots are about 60 by 120 with some outliers on corner lots. Your land value is typically 100% the same on a street.
So I want to point out in the example that you just gave, with your personal example, you talked about one neighbor making a change and yours staying the same. I'm assuming that the remaining properties in your neighborhood stayed the same and that was the only one that changed.
Yeah, we all share a land value. So in the target area will be the same. They will share, and they do, they share the land valuation, but they won't share the improvement value valuation.
Okay.
Which-
So
or
let's
home
think
value.
about maybe the opposite situation where the entire street has been redesigned, redeveloped with these homes at 21 to 2,200 square feet, brand new, excellent rating, and they're at the highest valuation for that specific area because of the improvements in the land.
Yeah.
What happens to that 1, 2, or 3 homes that are left in that neighborhood that have remained to be undeveloped?
I can't speak for that. I haven't run into it. At this point, we have 20 in an area where 20 houses in a target area isn't much. I can't even say we're swinging a pendulum. But if you were redoing a whole street, I mean, it's taken us 12 years to get these, and we barely have any on the same street. So it'd take me probably 200 years to get one whole street. But I'm up for the challenge. But if we did that, then your land valuation and your improvement valuation would be very consistent and strong. And I don't know what would happen with the original valuation, but over time, it probably would escalate as well. But again, it would take me 200 years. But I'm in it to win it, Councilman Roman.
But the
I do
point
it.
is, eventually, the property valuations are going to catch up. And so that, in essence, is the principle of gentrification.
The principle of gentrification is pushing people out when you overbuild for an area, and it naturally happens anywhere in DFW, we can say. We've kind of all seen it elsewhere in other pockets that we're familiar with, Design District or parts of Bishop Arts. And so that's why we wanted to protect this area, because we noticed there were lower values on the original structures, and we wanted to make sure, like right now, our largest home of the 5, I believe, is not larger than 1,865 or 1,900 square feet. And so since we own the land, we can control what's going on it. So we sold the land to Builders of Hope, and in a purchase and sale agreement, we have a restriction agreement anytime the city sells land. And the restriction agreement says you may not build larger than 1,900 square feet or 1,800 square feet. So if, let's just say they were to come in and accidentally pull a permit for 2,100, they don't get the permit because we have a restriction agreement. So just for the city-owned lots, it's the only thing we control in the world. So the city-owned lots, we will control the square footage, and they're smaller. And the catch-22 is people don't want small homes. You know, they want bigger home. I want a bigger home. But we have to make sure that we keep the valuation reasonable for the neighborhood, as you mentioned, because we don't want the reverse effect of what we're trying to do. Because we have the lots. And we're not, so what do we do with the lots is the million-dollar question.
Well, let me redirect you back to my original question. So if what I just described through, trying to follow the chains of logic is not gentrification, then how would you describe that? The effect of the neighboring properties getting to a point where the valuation of those properties are now impacting the valuation of the properties that have been unimproved, and as a result, now their property taxes have increased to a point that are unsustainable.
Their property taxes are going to increase anyway. Just being in Texas, you're going to have an escalation no matter where you are.
But I'm not talking about a natural increase.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about an artificial increase that's being created by the city going in, purchasing lots, teaming up with somebody who's going to go in, rebuild something brand new, and it's increasing the value. That's specifically what I'm talking about.
Gotcha. And I know that's a real fear because over the years in the target area, I've had people come and talk to me about it because it can be scary seeing vacant lots and wondering what's going on. Are we going to get two-story homes? Are we going to get really expensive homes and then I can't afford to live here? It's a completely valid question. So that's why we went after Builders of Hope and went after the square footage. Even if we had the whole street, which is rare, it's impossible for me. If you gave me $1 million, I still couldn't do it. Not within the years I have left to live. But an entire street would be hard to do. But even if you did an entire street, you still would have, at that point in time, Dallas County coming out and assessing the value per property. So again, the land is similar, but the improvements are different.
But it's also capped.
If you're a homestead exemption.
Yeah.
Of a certain increase each year of what you can, but I understand what you're saying because the fear is real. And I think when people see the first 5 homes, and you had a question earlier that I wanted to answer and not interrupt, but you're asking where the people going or what's happening. We have people calling us to buy their lots. I don't know where they're going. We haven't asked. But they haven't had an opportunity to come back in because we haven't had an opportunity to have new homes yet. So the first 5 completed homes will be the first opportunity for people to come back to the neighborhood. I want to make sure they answer that. And then, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say since most of the street is not new, only maybe we have 2 on Greenhurst, I believe. I mean, some of the streets we have 2, but it's rare. Then that means most of the street is not new. So the majority are older homes where people probably want to sign up in the repair program or other avenues for help. But it's a valid concern, and I've heard it for a while.
And And to be fair also, part of what I've learned when I went to go campaigning, I went door to door and talked to quite a bit of people. And what I learned was that these are generational households. These are homes that have been inherited and now are being owned by the child of someone who is deceased. And now this parent who now has children intends on eventually passing it
Yeah.
on to the next generation. So, what I'm trying to protect is exactly that. You said, this may not happen for hundreds of years. Well, I know one resident who has lived in their house for almost 60 years, and prior to that, their parents owned that for
Yeah.
at least 50 years. So we've gotten to almost 100 years in that generational household. And so when I hear concerns from people about the effect that this program is going to have, not for them immediately, but for their children or maybe their children's children, that's where it hits home for me. And that's why I can't be in support of a program like this. So I appreciate what you're trying to do, but it just doesn't align with me. It doesn't align with the values that I hold to myself or the things that I've been told when I went door to door. Now, that we're on this subject, also, just to reiterate my points from earlier, you've had an opportunity to mention your points, so I sort of wanted to talk about them. Continuing on with the Renaissance program, we already have on our future agenda item list to talk about some of these revitalization efforts and how we're going to strategically address them so that we as a whole council can have a discussion. I mean, I think right now we're just talking about where we're going to allocate money, but we can't allocate money if we don't have a plan. So I think it's important that we have that discussion first. And secondly, I think somewhere along the way, maybe labeling something parks and trails as part of the bond is maybe a little bit misleading, because while that is one of the outcomes of that, the purpose for that money, it has a much larger effect on a specific area on Valley View, or Valwood, between B Street and Josie. The reason we put that money on or categorize it that way is because it's not enough money to address the concern that exists there for public safety. And so it's going to take a lot more money, but if we put it in this bucket as part of this initiative and agree that we're going to devote the funds for that specific area, that's a way to kind of make a step towards addressing that public safety issue. While addressing it, you're able to address multiple other things like parks and trails, because you essentially, by addressing that specific street, you're going to be expanding sidewalks, so that is a natural connection to a trail that already exists on B Street. So that's sort of where that came from. Now, in retrospect, if people are concerned about it, maybe that just needs to be described in a different way that is more consistent with what its initial goal was. The second thing is, I've heard many times when we were talking about the Secure Act funds, or CARES funding, I'm sorry, that we received as a result of COVID, I heard many people say, why not let the voters decide? Why not let the voters decide? Why is it that City Council is devoting X million dollars of money over to parks or to this or to that? We should have the ability to decide this. Even if it's not money that's coming out of our own city budget, we should have the ability to vote on it. Okay, so here we are trying to provide an opportunity for people to vote on it. And now you're suggesting, well, I don't know that it's going to be successful. Maybe let's just take it back and allocate the money somewhere else. And then when we get funding from the state government, the county or federal government, or some grant or whatever, and then at that point, we can devote funds to doing this. But it's sort of like changing the rules. And I said this upstairs, it feels like we're just changing the rules constantly. It's, at one point residents say, give us an opportunity to vote. Now we're taking the opportunity for them to vote and saying, well, the next time we get free money, then we're gonna allocate money for these projects. And I promise you that just given how things have gone, it seems like we're going to now change the rules again if we were to receive money in the future. And people are going to say, well, you should give us the opportunity to vote. We at some point have to draw the line and make a decision. And the best way to do that is to allow the residents to just vote on it. I think whether it passes or not, that's a chance we all have to take, just like when we decide to run for office. We don't know if we're going to win or not, but we believe in it, and we think it's going to be for the better of the city, and that's why we do it. And I think the current proposal addresses multiple facets of our community. It addresses those who are part of our active adult community by addressing the underfunding that was created for the senior center, the Branch Connection. It is addressing public safety concerns that we're having for those specific residents that are impacted over on Valwood between B Street and Josie. Not only that, but anybody who maneuvers through that street can drive a little bit more safely without people speeding from stop sign to stop sign. I think it affects, in a positive way, affects the quality of life for families, for those who are young people. And so I think we were trying to find some bond package that touched on the demographics of our city. And I think it's doing it. And if we want to move money from Squire Park over to something else, I think that I would be in support of that, just because of the feedback that I've gotten from my residents now experiencing the opening of Hoyt Park. They're concerned about the propensity for crime or for the park to be damaged. This one that we have right now is already being kind of damaged by the use that's going on there. And it's on a main street, it's very visible. So this one that's not so visible, I can see the concern, and I think I would be in support of allocating the money somewhere else. But in terms of the other items, I feel very strongly that they are equally balanced in being able to provide some value to at least one of the demographics of people that I've mentioned. And that's it for now.
Thank you, Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate your comments. Councilman Barry?
Check back with me at the end, please. Could you check back with me at the end, please?
Will do.
Thank you.
Councilman Mayor? Oh, you want to go?
No, he's fine.
Okay. I'm working my way back.
Thank you, Mayor. I think a lot of what Councilman Roman has alluded to is accurate. The idea that we put thought into a financial opportunity with this particular bond to utilize the money. We have had town hall for this bond proposal. We have actually, as Director Brady communicated, we have 3 more that are scheduled on this. The mayor and I had an opportunity to converse earlier this week on this particular item. I think waffling, I'll call it waffling, that's my term. We put time and effort into coming up with these 5 particular items, these buckets, if you will. There was a lot of discussion back and forth, arriving at these particular numbers and recognizing that these were general obligation bonds that would be a voted item by the residents. And I think we do have to look at the conversations that have been had in the past. We have the opportunity to put this in front of the voters and allow them to have their say on how money is being spent. It's a unique opportunity with these bonds coming complete. As we pointed out in the town hall that was held at the beginning of January, the overall effect of this on the average homeowner was about $20 on their annual tax bill. If we did nothing, they would have their tax bill reduced. So we have a long laundry list of items across the city that need our attention, need the council's attention, need staff attention. We do a great job with the budget. And so one of the things that we talked about post that that bond town hall, was we budget for a number of these particular projects already. And so this was an opportunity to add a few more dollars to some of those particular items going forward with some specificity that's necessary. Councilman Jackson alluded to it in his opening comments. We've been on a timeline that has a finite date to it if we want to get this on the May election. And so I think we've done our due diligence, at least I believe we've done our due diligence. We put it in front of the community. We're asking for their input, trying to inform them to the best of our ability to do this. So I'm not in favor of reallocating the dollars. I think we have to let them stand on their own, valuation by the residents. That's my approach here. And we know we have some bigger issues with water going forward. We're talking about years of programming that we'll need in order to address those. There's a lot of other facets waiting on the government to decide what the requirements will be and what the timelines will be, and if there are additional fundings. This council may not ever get to that particular decision. It may be a future council or several council iterations beyond that. So it's just the job of the city to manage our dollars to the best ability that we can. And here's an opportunity where we have $8 million. We've talked upstairs that our sister, not a sister city, but the city south of us, Dallas, is grappling with, $1 billion of bonds, and we're only dealing with 8 million here. So it's still impactful to several, to our community, and we need to figure out how to go forward. I brought up the subject when we were talking about the demo rebuild and what we're calling the neighborhood revitalization or the neighborhood renaissance. Those terms are interchangeable. I brought that up, and it was already mentioned by Councilman Roman, that's a future item that we needed to vet. And so therefore, I'm totally against putting money into a program where we don't really know how the rest of the council fits in this, and to understand how all of these vertical programmings align with the direction that we want to take collectively as a council and as a city going forward. So there's a lot to grapple with here. I think that's just my 2 cents at the moment. So thank you.
Very good. Councilwoman?
Well, I'm in the middle. I agree with Councilman Merritt and Roman. On the demo rebuild, neighborhood revitalization, Renaissance, we just need to wait. We need to really have a strategic plan. I'll throw it out there, since the strategic planning is on Thursday. Is there any reason why we can't have these conversations and call a special meeting to call the bond if we need to? Just an idea to continue those conversations. As far as Squire Park, from what I've heard, again, like Councilman Roman said, due to what is happening at Hoya, that is their concern. So I just don't feel like, there's already 1.2 in the budget for Squire, so there are improvements already planned for it. So that 1.5, I believe in my heart that our constituents have spoken on that one. And like you had said, these were conversations we probably should have had months ago. But here we are. So I'm okay with moving the 1.5. If we do the trails and connectivity, it has to be very explicit for where it's going to be used geographically. It can't just be all willy-nilly, we're going to use it somewhere. We need to say where we're going to use it. And as far as the infrastructure, I mean, I told you the dates earlier. I have the emails with the dates on it. October of this year is when we have to have a plan for it. And we're looking at, it's a 10, 20-year project, and it's anything built before 1980. And think about that for our city and how old our city is.
Thank you. Thank you. All very good comments. Councilman Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive of restructuring the allocation of the bond in some way, focused on reinvesting in our city and contributing toward the infrastructure issues that need to be addressed over a long-term horizon. And with the bond issue, we're talking about long-term horizons, so I feel like the bonds, the nature of their long-term horizon should align with the nature of how we're going to spend that money long-term. And I feel like the water infrastructure certainly aligns with that. The branch connection aligns with that. It's never been remodeled fully the way as it stands today. And to bring that facility up to standards today, I believe aligns with long-term nature of the bond itself. I'm not supportive of Squire Park that's been mentioned. I think my colleagues mostly agreed with that. And I'm not necessarily supportive with the specific area of the trails and connectivity, simply because $2 million is not going to do enough in that area. So my concern is if we leave those on the ballot as is, there's a higher chance that those two items will not pass. The other three may likely pass. That being said, I also believe that the voters' voice needs to be heard. And so I'm supportive of leaving it the way it is and letting the voters speak to it. But know that if any of these don't pass, we not only can't bring it up again for 3 years, but we lose that opportunity for that bond amount to spend on that project. So it will be a lost opportunity, albeit out of a total of $8 million, relatively small amounts considering all things, but we lose that opportunity. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Barrett.
I guess my general feeling is all of this started because we had debt that rolled off, and we're wanting to replace it with more debt, which I generally don't agree with. I think the water infrastructure is a good place to go into debt long-term. The other items on here are harder for me to justify, but good points have been made about letting the people decide. I would be for leaving the water infrastructure and the branch connection and the demo rebuild, whatever we've renamed it, those three items on the ballot.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm not hearing a consensus one way, a strong consensus one way or the other, and it's going to be up to you all to decide, and we'll get there here in a minute. But yeah, I just want to point out for our audience here and those that are watching, it's real important that we have a good, robust decision on this and other items, and that we walk away. We're all still friends afterwards. We might have different opinions, but nobody's getting mad. Nobody's yelling at each other, unlike some other council meetings that I've seen. But this is really good, and I think it's healthy to have this, and we're hearing different viewpoints from everyone, and that's, I think, what helps get us to the right place to make the best decision moving forward. Again, my intention wasn't to throw a big wrench or monkey wrench into this whole discussion, but this was our first meeting since the state of the city, and so I would have been remiss if I didn't bring up what I was hearing from folks. And so I guess based on the discussion, let me ask everyone, and we'll go down the line, would you favor a reallocation of funds to other items, or would you like to leave all of these items as is and put them forth as presented? And I'll start to my left. Councilman Roman.
Can you come back to me? I'm just pulling up the
Okay.
presentation.
Councilman Baird.
I'd like to reallocate
Okay.
and
We'll-
possibly drop two things off.
Okay. Councilwoman Bennett.
Reallocate Squire Park, and if we can't geographically contain trails and connectivity, I'd like to reallocate it as well.
And before we continue, let me just ask City Manager and/or Councilman Roman to clarify what was listed as trails and connectivity. If I'm understanding correct, Councilman Roman was trying to earmark that money for improvements on Valwood, which would help to slow traffic down, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. So I think, if anything, we probably need to be a little bit more precise in the name, so it's not this general broad term. So we can come back to that. Councilman Jackson.
Mayor, I support reallocating, and I would do that in this way. Demo rebuild, neighborhood revitalization program, moving that from 500,000 to 1 million, allocating 5 million to the water infrastructure, and 2 million to branch connection. That makes up the total $8 million bond.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilman Merritt.
Well, I'll probably be the outlier here at the moment. I will allow it to go as we've proposed.
Okay. Coming back to Councilman Roman.
So 500,000 for demo rebuild, 2 million for branch connection, and then for the trails and connectivity, 2 million for reallocating Squire Park over to that, which would be a total of 3.5, or allocating that extra 1.5 over to the water water infrastructure improvement project. So for a total of 3.5. So either 3.5 for trails and connectivity or 3.5 for the water infrastructure, just to reallocate that extra 1.5 from Squire Park.
Okay. So we have several that have indicated that they would like to reallocate funding and possibly drop a couple of items. Two have very specific reallocations that they've stated. Councilman Jackson with demo rebuild and neighborhood revitalization, upping that to $1 million. Water infrastructure, upping that to $5 million and leaving the branch connection at 2. And then Councilman Roman leaving demo rebuild at 500,000, the branch connection at 2, and then trails and water infrastructure would both still be there, but the reallocation of Squire Park funds to one or the other of those items. Just trying, okay. So, thoughts,
Mayor,
comments? Yes, sir.
I can support Richard's, Councilman Jackson's proposal. Although ideally, something that we're going into debt for, I would like to be more infrastructure, those type things instead of entertainment things, but I can go for that, what he proposed.
Thought popped in my head while we're having this discussion. I know our bond counsel is here, and I'm just curious, is there a time, let's say we put forth an item and it gets approved, is there a time to use or encumber those funds after voter approval? We just can't take that money and just let it sit in the bank and earn interest for us.
Correct. You would not issue if the voters were to approve whichever propositions are presented to them, it then comes back to this council on the council's discretion on timing and when the projects are to be done and whether to ever issue bond money out of that proposition. It all comes back as a council decision, and you wouldn't do that until you had projects ready to go. You don't issue the debt. There are some time limitations for when you have to spend the money under federal tax law because the federal, the tax code's set up not to let you earn arbitrage on those bonds.
Right.
So it's a subsidized rate because they're tax exempt rates, and so you would issue them when you're ready to undertake those projects.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. And we were moving down the line, and Councilwoman Bennett said she was inclined to support Councilman Jackson. We know Councilman Jackson, so Councilman Merritt.
This question is for Councilman Jackson. Are we putting 500,000 into the demo rebuild half and 500,000 into the neighborhood renaissance? Is that the distribution that you foresee?
No, I would simply foresee $1 million, because I thought that the proposals for neighborhood revitalization, not, is it for both programs or is it just for the one?
Well, as it's listed right now, it's listed for one, but if we choose to include neighborhood revitalization, the language would have to be rewritten in order to include some allocation of funding to that portion,
And I'm
or
sorry.
that program, rather.
I'm sorry, Mayor Rob Collins with Braceville again, and what I wanted to reiterate was the Proposition A, which is the currently $500,000 in your packet, is to provide funds for the public purpose of continuing an economic development fund to finance the city's programs, plural, for economic development for single-family residential and revitalization in the city. I believe that is those two economic development programs you have in place and how you utilize the last series of bond money for this program that was talked about earlier, I think in 2017. So that would cover both of these because it's really for a single purpose, which is revitalizing single-family residences. They're not two completely different. One's, a commercial program and one's residential. So in the past, you kept it under this one proposition. That's the way it's currently drafted. If you want to break it out, we could certainly do that if that was the council's discretion.
Yeah, I would not suggest breaking it out. I would suggest we keep them together because one program may move faster than the other in 1 year and the other one takes faster than the other year. I wouldn't want to be under those constraints. So
Certainly reasonable. I was just pointing out that they're both for kind of the residential revitalization, however you really call it, demo,
Right.
rebuild, or the renaissance. It's all for that purpose of improving residential properties.
Right. So my proposal would be then for that money simply to be for both programs.
The question's been answered. Again, I'll go back to the fact that we have a future agenda item to just talk about these particular programs. And so what we want to do with them in the long term, I'm uncomfortable with adding more monies to this particular line item, so I would prefer the offering at 500,000. So, and the residual to land in the water infrastructure improvements. That'd be, if you're asking for clarification, that's where I would land.
Thank you. And if I could, just to that last point, while this council hasn't had the opportunity to discuss this item and the future strategy, there is a strategy in place. That was set in motion, as Allison said, back in the 90s, I believe it was what she mentioned, and that's the direction she's still working under today. So,
And if I can clarify, there's been enough interest from 2 council members to the opposite, which is why it's a future agenda item.
correct.
So while I understand that you're saying that, well, this is the direction that we're already moving in because this is the direction that was given, 2 people are saying at the minimum, no.
And if I may add, Mayor, we can clarify, I believe the bond monies of 2017 are whittling away, and we're in a very small dollar amount that is remaining from that.
I've
$4
spent
million.
every dollar,
You spent every dollar.
everyone,
So
pretty
therefore.
much. Might have a
I
little
think-
bit left.
I think, Mayor, the question that we have on the table from at least 2 council members is that fund is out of money. And therefore, is it the will of this particular council and the residents that we engage with and we represent to continue that program going forward before we put more money into it? And so therefore, I've been very open and transparent that 500,000, even in its existing state, is very troubling for me because I don't know where we want to go going forward. I think there are a lot of issues. We saw the P&Z discussion about the middle housing. I think there's a lot of challenges that we need to figure out how we're going to address going forward. So this is refunding something that we haven't had a discussion for, and I have a challenge just grappling with that.
And does that include the demo rebo program and leaving that as is?
Well, as we got clarification from the bond council, it's all those programs. So it's my understanding that while we may call it demo rebuild and while we may call it neighborhood renaissance, both those programs are covered under that. And it would be funded to this 500,000 if the voters approve it.
I have a question. So you said that it was single family only.
I think well, if it's a single family, I meant
It
residential.
says single family
I'm sorry, yes.
residential.
And I would say that's the way this is currently drafted, to cover both of the economic development programs that you have. If the council wants to change that, they certainly can. That was just reflecting how it is currently drafted and how it was drafted back in 2017 and how the city utilized those funds. But it's residential, not, I said, well, it does say single family residential and revitalization, so.
Okay. So does the middle housing qualify under that if it is not an apartment? If it's one of the duplexes they showed us or?
That's not single family.
I know.
No, because it's a single owner, single family plotted lot.
Okay.
Because the existing programs are that way.
Right.
We can change
it be
anything.
expanded?
Can it be expanded?
The wording.
I'm going to call on my friends.
The answer is yes, but it has to match a program that you have in place.
Okay.
So if you don't have a current program in place, it's hard to put that on a ballot and have voters
Okay.
vote on it.
You answered.
So, I'm sorry. Yes.
So I want to go back. I think it would be a mistake. I think it would be very dangerous to end the funding for the demo rebuild program. I know what the language says, but when we give specific direction to economic development, that we want to continue the efforts of demo rebuild because we see the payoff, we see the value that it's created for our city. And to not fund that, as Allison pointed out, $500,000, that would take her about 5 years roughly on that particular portion of the program. I think we would be doing the city a big disservice at this point. If you wanted to reallocate the other $500,000 to water infrastructure, that might be fine, or I would be fine with that. But granted, I don't vote. I'm just issuing an opinion.
Well, just to reiterate, I said my first position was to leave it alone at 500,000.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear.
Okay. I didn't know whether you would change it,
No,
so I misunderstood.
so I didn't want to add 500,000 to get to the million that Councilman Jackson is perhaps recommending. And I say perhaps. That's what he's floated as an idea.
Thoughts, council?
So Mayor, I agree with you. We have two proven programs here that are part of this proposal. And in the least, we should continue to fund it with the minimum of $500,000. If that's where we land, I'm supportive of that. I believe that's the right place to put this money. The other two would be with the water infrastructure and then with branch connection. And where we put the other $500,000, I would suggest, we'd put it in the water infrastructure. So we're now looking at $500,000 for the revitalization, Proposition A, $5.5 million for water infrastructure, and $2 million for branch connection. If I'm understanding
Okay,
consensus.
understood that. Councilwoman,
I agree.
you agree? Councilman?
If I could clarify and add to my last statement, I'm for all of these things. I think they're good for the city. It's just I'm not for going into debt for all of these things. So I didn't want anybody to think that I wasn't for trails and sidewalks. All of those are good proposals. So, but yes, I'm for that adjustment.
Okay. Well, and in fairness to everybody here, and I'm going to come to you next, I think labeling trails and connectivity when the real crux of this was for public safety along Valwood, that was a mistake. And maybe folks would have thought otherwise. I don't know. But you had very specific purpose in mind when you proposed this item, yes? Okay. So now it's your turn.
I don't have anything to say.
Okay.
I have the same opinion that I did before.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other comments? Okay. This is something that is marked for action. Comment? Comment? Okay. Well,
Here, I might help you. If you get to a motion, and maybe Richard will lead that motion since he has the numbers.
I was going to have him reread it,
Right.
but
So,
do we allow public comment on this?
yes, if I can finish first.
Yes.
Hang on, Mayor. So when we get to that item, motion to approve that ordinance, whatever that number is, with the following amendments. We're calling out Proposition A, demo, revitalization, whatever that amount is, branch connection, whatever the amount is, and the water infrastructure, whatever that amount is, and eliminating the other propositions. And Rob will be making these changes to the ordinance as we speak so that we can adopt it tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
And then when will we have public comment?
You can have public comment anytime before we
Right
take action,
Right now.
if you want.
Okay. So this is a public hearing, so we have a speaker, Mayor Glancy.
Scoop. Bill Glancy, 3808 Wooded Creek Drive, Farmers Branch. I apologize, I can't hear everything you folks are saying, but there are some things that I have a concern about. I was kind of critical of the BMO rebuild program when it started, but it's been proven to be a great thing. And originally, the council back in the 80s put very little money into that. They went over and bought 10 houses over there in Branch Crossing. I think they were averaged about $60,000 a piece. We turned around and sold them for about 25. And it took a while to get going. Any of those kind of programs, you have to have a critical mass of a number of houses in an area to develop it. And it took a good while for us to move from Branch Crossing. Finally, we got them over to Farmersdale in that area. And I've, in the past, have tried to promote the idea of taking an area and going in and buying 10 houses so that we do make an impact. There are several areas of the city, and all of our city, they're not all the same. Some areas have different issues, some don't. Just to your point, Omar, where you have multi-generational. A lot of those houses off of Austell Parkway are probably prime for that. Those are very good quality. A lot of those houses were built on pier and beams, and they can be remodels. Somebody owns the house, they can come in and fix it up and repair it, and we could help with that process. But then we had a bond program for Four Corners, and there was about $5 million left out of that bond program, and that was got put into tear down rebuild program. I don't think any of us really thought through that program. My understanding was that was seed money, it stayed there. When the people paid us back for the lot, it went back into the fund, so that we would have continual money to spend in it. It didn't go, but it went by, a lot of time it went back into general funds, and then we depleted the money. And we did, a great job for a city, and if anything, it should be figured out how to expand that program and do that. And I don't want us to put it up to the voters and turn it down, and then we'd be stuck to your point, okay, you turned it down, you don't want us to do it anymore. And the other thing with infrastructure replacement, we're always going to have high infrastructure costs. There's always going to be water lines to be replaced and things. I don't think generally we're in any worse shape than we've ever been in it, but it's almost something you have to commit to staff to put so many $1 million a year into that process, because number one, you can't do them all at once. They have a limited amount of production they can do. Our staff has to get geared up to have so much replacement of it over a period of time. And you generally take whatever that figure is and divide it out over a number of years, and you ask the staff, okay, we have to put that much money in every year. We originally did most of the streets water line replacement here out of revenue sharing we used to get from the federal government. We dedicated all that money and went through and continually replaced water lines. Well, you don't have that today, so you're going to have to commit to it. But to put a bunch of money in there that we can't actually do. We can't tear up all our streets in the city in a matter of a year or two, because a lot of this water lines and stuff are under our streets. So it has to be a very structured, planned out program, and the staff can handle, get enough people to do that. So those are two things that I just observed from this whole process. And personally, I think the bond program is so small that I don't know that to me it's that big a deal, but maybe it is. And I don't want people to turn us down on something over a small amount of money that ends up, ties our hands and what really needs to be done over the city. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I hope that helps put everything in the proper context. Would you like to make a motion at this point for your?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'd like to make the motion to amend item A3 24-105 as follows. Proposition A will remain at $500,000. That's revitalization. Proposition B be removed. That's Squire Park. Proposition C, branch connection, remains at $2 million. Proposition D, regarding public improvements, trails and connectivity, be removed. Proposition E, water infrastructure and improvements, changed to $5.5 million.
And the ordinance.
Ordinance,
3849.
thank you, 3849.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Just point of clarification, just so you know that when Rob makes corrections to the ordinance, he will relabel those A, B, and C.
Okay.
But your motion was clear. Thank you.
I second the motion.
Thank you very much. So we have motion and second. If you would, please indicate your preference. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you very much. We did not have a study session, or executive session, rather, I'm sorry. We did not have executive session this evening, so there's no action to take as a result of that. So with that, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess, then we will meet back here to continue study session and pick up with item A4. Thank you. We are resuming our study session at 7:43. Next up will be item A4, which is provide an update on the Multicultural Task Force and event details.
Jeff, does this come up? Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for having me this evening. Tonight, I'm here, I'm Jeff Fairchild, Special Events Manager in Parks and Recreation. Tonight is the update for the Multicultural Task Force. And just going to kind of take you back a little bit. It was almost a year ago to the day I was standing before you, and there was a lot of emphasis on special events and what direction did the city want to go, and a lot of decisions were made at that time with existing events and then ideas for new events. And so just after consideration and discussion, the decision was made to take an existing event, Viva Farmers Branch, and transition it into a multicultural event. And we were ambitious and said we can do this, and we're going to launch it in the spring of 2024. And so the decision at the time was made with the council support. Let's put this forward. Let's make this happen. And then to assist with the planning of that, due to the scope of this type of event, it was deemed appropriate and a good benefit for the city that we would bring about a multicultural task force made up of residents and those that might have an interest in helping this event succeed. So just a little bit briefly, just kind of taking you back when we presented before, the purpose of this multicultural task force is multifaceted to help us in our decision, our planning, for all different types of the different things that you go into planning an event, from site layout to community outreach. And so that was kind of the guiding purpose to this. And so with help from city manager's office and city secretary, we put together a task force application, defined what that would look like, the questionnaire, the interview process, that thanks to Stacy and her team for helping us with that. And so it was probably September, I believe, of 2023, where council, you were all given your docket of nominees, and each fourth put some nominees together, and we formulated a task force of 11 residents. And so we jumped right in. That was in September. We had our first meeting in October, and as you see there, we have met to date 4 times as the total task force committee. We have now branched off into several small subcommittees, which we indicated would be formed. You know, you have a marketing committee, you have a entertainment committee. So there have been some smaller meetings that meet as needed on their own. But to date, we've had 4, 1 per month, and we actually have one next month or next week scheduled. The task force, everything that I'm going to talk to you about further into this presentation, our task force is up to speed on. We present ideas to them, and they've, basically we've discussed them and signed off, and they understand the sense of urgency of, this event's next month, and so we're ready to make it happen. So our next meeting is next Monday. We are going to. They have requested a site walk of historical parks. So we're going to move out there from the rec center and have everyone meet and do a site walk and kind of visualize what we're seeing this event and how it's going to be laid out. And then, of course, we have a sunset provision in there. If the city council wishes to move forward with this and continue with the event and having a task force, well, then there's the parameters on how to make that go forward. So we've been meeting, and from that meeting, we came up with a name, an identity, and what we envision this event to be. From the name, Gateway to the Globe, a multicultural celebration. The 2 paragraphs there, just kind of what we've come up with is a kind of not a mission statement, so to speak, but kind of what it is. Why are we doing this event? What's the purpose of it? What's its destiny? How it's going to be perceived and everything. So this is kind of our platform that we look for and why we're having this event. So that was the logo. They have different variations of that, have a horizontal type look, but this is a Gateway to the Globe. We felt it was a modern look, and it just kind of gave it a nice, clean, crisp, and just looked really, really nice. So some details that have come from this. The date, obviously, March 23rd, coming up on that Saturday at the Historical Park, 11 to 5, and I am pleased to tell you that due to the a number of applications for performances that are going to be scheduled on the main stage, we're going to push the event another hour, 11 to 6. We've had that kind of response from groups that want to perform. And I'm just going to briefly, and our applications are still not, that's closes this Friday, but I'm just going to China, Mexico, Austria, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, Poland, Spain, the Philippines, India, Turkey, Ireland, Ukraine, Polynesia. These are all countries that will be represented, performances on stage, doing some type of cultural exhibit or things like that. So it's coming together, and we still have another couple days for other organizations to apply. So, but again, we've already moved it back an hour just to accommodate in this year one. It's free admission. We're going to have a main performance stage. From the task force, they said we'd love to see a kids area. So we've developed a kids area for this event. Marketplace, and Sandy Carter on our team has been hard putting that together. And then cultural booths is kind of a blending of the two, so to speak. We'll have food trucks representing various cultures. So we've put this thing together, and it's really grown, and it's been exciting for us as a staff. I think in my conversations with these organizations, I think you're gonna have a lot of first-time visitors to Farmers Branch. It was explaining where we are, what we're doing here, and we found that there were other events already that weekend. Other cities were launching things, and I was a little nervous at first, but then things just kind of fell into place, and realizing last week, my gosh, we can go another hour. We've got that many groups that want to perform. So it's just been unique and amazing how it's kind of all evolved and come together. So we're excited for that. And that's where we are with the event. And again, thank you all for having that vision to allow us to move forward with it. And the task force has been very instrumental. I think it's gonna take some time, for it to evolve and find its place, because we were crunched for time. And our first meeting was October, and we had to tell them, hey guys, we have Bluegrass coming up in 2 weeks. We'll get back to you, and for them to kind of understand, even our staff, and then with the opening of Hoya. So there's been a lot in these 4 months, but I think it will take time for everyone to kind of find their way, and I think we will learn a lot from this event, which will kind of more define the role of the task force.
Thank you very much, Jeff. This sounds so exciting. It really does. And, if it all happens the way you anticipate, I think it'll really blow the community away. So I'm very excited about it. Let's hear what our council has to say. Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Jeff. As you read off all those different countries and representation, the words, what a beautiful thing, came to mind. And so exciting for this as a Farmers Branch first on this scale. What is the marketing strategy? You said we're going to have probably a lot of visitors to Farmers Branch for the first time. So how are we going to market this event?
You'll see the kind of the grassroots level. Every task force member is going to get handed 15 yard signs to display and put out around town. So we have, the local level. What we'll do as a city with Jeff and his team, the city will put forth through its channels, its typical, it's the water bill, the Facebook pages. So we'll have that with the city and this committee, which is expected to help us market. So there's that level. We had a paid budget of $2,000, which we will use through our digital media, through our social media campaign to go that route. So that will be direct ads placed on digital. We just don't have the budget to go to Channel 8 and things like that. But we are going to contract with one of the publicity agencies. I know before everyone's thinking of Hoya, but this one will be a much more lower level type of investment and exposure, but we'll at least try to get us on some of the morning TV shows and letting people know this event is going to be launched. And then we lean on the organizations, all of them that have their own Facebook pages and they're following their network. So it's kind of this three-tiered approach. Some of it's paid, some of it's expected if you're a committee member to help market, and then we lean on the participants. And if you're a food truck, have a booth there, we look to you to say, it behooves you to let people know where you're going to be this Saturday. So we lean on them and the performers to market to your network. So that's kind of the three.
Right. So what is it's going to be in the historical park. What is our capacity?
8,000-9,000. I think, we look at fireworks and that's 6,000, and then half the field is taken up with But for this
Okay.
event, I think you could safely put 9,000 people
Okay.
in that field.
All right, yeah. So probably the marketing needs to be tempered a little bit because I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm just being overly optimistic, but if word got out, we potentially could fill the park. And are we prepared?
The nice thing about this location is compared to Hoya, this is a fenced perimeter.
Right.
We have the ability, just like with Independence Day, we have signage already made, event has reached capacity. And it's a 7-hour event now. I would love for us to have that first
A lot of
year.
come and go, maybe.
A lot of come and go. I would love for that to be a problem, but I think the fact that it's fenced and Ford Road it will be blocked off, I think if it comes to that, we're prepared for that.
Our typical large event setup at the historical park, we're using Ford Road and,
Not for this event, we don't see a necessity this first year because our performances on the stage are about 20 minutes per act, and there's a 5-minute break. It's on and off, and so everything will be in the park, confined, but it's a pretty good size footprint.
okay. And Farmers Branch Lane is going to be closed off, you said?
No, sir,
Oh, it's not.
just Ford Road, and we do that because the main parking is at Metro Square, and just safety, crossing the bridge. It's just safer to shut down Ford Road and allow people to park at Metro Square and safely walk to
up that Ford Road.
Yes, sir.
But people will still be able to drive up and down Farmers Branch Lane.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. But we'll have signage to direct event parking away from that neighborhood so that they're going to be disrupted. There's no avoiding that day, but to try to minimize that impact.
What we've learned is that people are just GPS, the historical park, 2540 Farmers Branch Lane, that's what comes up. That's why there's so much concentration on Farmers Branch Lane. We've kind of gotten to the point in our marketing where we don't even put the park we have to put the location. You have to,
Sure.
we don't put the address. We try to emphasize 12300 Ford Road, Metro Square, just to get it in their mind.
They drive there instead.
They drive there instead.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm really looking forward to this.
Councilman Mayor.
Jeff, thank you for the presentation. Quick question. Obviously, as I'm aware of the sunset date for the commission, the event occurs on the 23rd of March. The sunset date is April the 30th. Obviously, I would suspect that you're going to have some sort of post-mortem opportunity with the committee one more time after the event. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, sir. We had one download scheduled that we would bring everyone back in to, and that would be the second Monday of the month so it would be right in that time before that sunset date.
Very good. And then at that point, you talked about this taking foot, if you will, to be a repetitive event. Is that the expectation of the Special Events Committee or your office, if you will, that this would be an ongoing?
I think we would love to see it come back I think it's just, it will build on, we will learn so much this year. I'd love to see this thing continue. I think it's got a good foundation, and I think it's got a good
Has your
future.
committee also discussed the interweaving, if you will, or the proposed interweaving of the Arts and Culture Committee? Have you discussed that?
I've only heard
Okay.
bits and pieces through some channels
Fair enough.
so if that is the future direction, I probably need to get a little more versed.
Right, and then we've discussed as a council, we would address that in the May timeframe where all the committees would be reconstituted, if you will, or filled as necessary. So, very good. Just wanted to make sure that concept of postmortem, if you will, download, as you called it, opportunity to figure out what we could do differently going forward, what worked well, what didn't, and then having interested parties that are on the cultural committee now look for the opportunity to continue their service in a commission that would be established and repopulated at a later date.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited for this. So do we have a number of vendors yet?
We've capped it at about 40, I think, what we're going to allow in. I'm not sure where Sandy is with that. Again, it's this Friday, but I think she's over 20.
So we're about halfway through?
About halfway through. But as I suspect with these things, when the closer it gets, when word starts circulating more, you get those 10th, 11th hour phone calls, so we will field and process what we can.
Okay,
So.
all right, fair, thank you.
Super. Councilman Baird.
Thanks to you, thanks to all of the committee members for all the work. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm going to be praying for no rain on that day.
All of you, please.
All of us. We'll pass the resolution. No rain. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Agenda A5 item, receive an update regarding commercial solid waste collection. Finally.
Appreciate the enthusiasm. Thank you, sir. Shane Davis, Deputy Director of Public Works. My goal today with this was to have Mike Rivera, our new solid waste manager, have his first interaction with y'all. Oh, sorry, I'm screaming at myself already. But Dallas County had other decisions where he's been a long, drawn-out jury selection and just realized he's not going to be selected, but it's taken him 2 days to get to that point. But he's put a lot of work into the work we've done since the last time I spoke to y'all. As a quick reminder, which we'll get into more detail, Farmers Branch is an open market commercial collection system. Those that never look at kind of dumpsters, if it's not your world, I get it. But here are some different examples. And the top one's a roll-off. You've seen that on our trucks. It's typically reserved for not food-related items, large bulky items, tree limbs, those type of things. Your more standard dumpsters there to the right. You see the one with the casters in apartment complexes. They can store them inside a garage, wheel them out for service. The one I want you to pay attention to is the bottom left. That's what's called a compactor. The other ones you're kind of dating in terms of solid waste. You're committed when you get to compactor. You spend money of your business money to make that thing work. You got to invest in infrastructure, electrical connections for those to work. So the business puts in money if they're going to go this route. So as I said, it's open market. So if you own a business, you can negotiate with any company you want to. That could be month to month, although I don't know anybody that really does that. But typically you can negotiate your length of contract, price, and service. The city gets a revenue of 10% of the gross from Farmers Branch operations. So Mike did a lot of work. He drove around the entire city, which got him really familiar with all of our commercial areas, just to see how many companies are out there. Turned out there's 30 different dumpsters out there. Through further inquiries, we found out not all of them are individual companies. Some are parts of other companies that have been acquired. They just haven't switched out the company name. But if you're driving around the city, there's 30 different dumpster labels out there. And approximately 1,000 containers, so 1,000 accounts. Your four big ones are Republic Services, that's who operates our landfill, Waste Connections. The surprising one to me is Waste Management still had that big of a presence since they kind of got out of this market from the disposal side. Then our current vendor for residential, that's CWD, Community Waste Disposal. So why are we talking to you all about this? From the staff perspective, we've got the main issues are the aesthetics, and I'll show you some pictures of streets. One's pretty notorious, I should say, just from its look. RP is responsible party, so if we find out there's a spill somewhere, unless it's right in front of the dumpster, if it's a hydraulic spill, trying to figure out the responsible party who dropped garbage down the road or an oil spill down the middle of the road, we don't know. Same thing with noise. What Mike's had to do multiple times now is we get a complaint from a neighbor, typically it's on the north side of town, that there's a dumpster, someone's collecting garbage before the time that's allowed. Well, we have a distance requirement in our ordinance too, but one, we got to figure out which company is it. So when you got 10 different companies in a particular area, he's got to get up early in the morning and basically do a stakeout and just sit out there and listen. The service isn't necessarily occurring on the same day. If you get a fill-in driver, it may just be a once or twice occurrence. But Mike's out there trying until we find a dumpster or the company's picking up at early morning. It takes a while. Garbage overflows another one. So when your dumpster, if you got too much trash in there and they're not servicing it frequently enough, you're trying to save money. If you got multiple containers in a row, it could be hard to figure out who the garbage overflows from. The enforcement currently is done by code enforcement and now Public Works, which would be myself and Mike. And as I said, the noise complaints usually require early morning stakeout. So here's some examples of some of the challenges we face. So this is Farmers Branch Creek in the upper left. That's what it looks like at the east side. If you've never been over there, that's the start of Farmers Branch Creek. You got Republic, Waste Management, I think, and probably another company just from this one picture. So again, if one of those, we have a bunch of trash in the creek, which one is the problem child? It's hard for us to figure that out. All we know is there's litter in the creek and our Parks Department's busy scooping that out. But if I want to go enforce and try and tell you to clean that up, it's tough. The next one in the top right, that's Four Corners behind the buildings over there. So again, you got green, blue, gray off in the distance. So again, multiple companies. And I think most of y'all know probably at the bottom, that street is in the bottom, that'd be Garden Brook. Just the location of dumpsters, and you can see the multiple companies that operate there as well. So that gets down to the aesthetics. So I was looking for direction from y'all tonight. We can leave things as they are. If y'all are happy with the way things are in Farm Branch, leave it alone. Let's not do anything different. We could also change our ordinances and add some more regulations, trying to tighten up some of these things where we're able. Garden Brook's a tough one just because of the site layout. There's really not another place to put those dumpsters other than right along the road, unfortunately. It'd take totally redeveloping those areas to really make a difference on the way that looks. And another option some cities have gone to is called a franchise. So basically one vendor collects all the solid waste, all the commercial garbage collection. There's some caveats to that, so that's when we talk about that compactor. Not everybody, if you're gonna make them switch that out, that's an expensive proposition. If you have national companies, typically they have, like Geico used to be here, they provide a contract across the entire country for one vendor. It's usually a big one, usually Republic or Waste Management. School districts are another one. They got multiple schools across 2 different cities. They have one vendor for all their campuses. So if you ever decide to look at something like that, there are some challenges that come along with that, and you can get some pushback. But I'm here to get some feedback from you all, see which direction you want us to go, and try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Shane. This was requested by Councilman Jackson to have on our agenda this evening. So, Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shane. So we'd had a conversation a while back about this and just some of the challenges with having multiple vendors. I'm surprised to see that we have 30.
So was I, very much so.
Companies with their trash trucks. They're small, medium, and large trucks with different capabilities. You have the trucks that can handle the roll-off containers and special trucks for the compactors and all.
Yep.
And then the problem of trying to figure out, like you said, whose hydraulic spill was this, or whose trash is going in the creek, and it costing city resources to chase some of these problems down if they can even be chased down, right?
Correct.
And so I'm thinking there's an opportunity for us to do better because it's important that our city be clean. And businesses want our city to be clean as well, and they play a role in that. On the other hand, they have each negotiated their own, or they have their own trash contract.
Yes, sir.
I would have to think if we had one or maybe 2 vendors, let's say it's Republic and CWD, the 2 bigger ones, right? Or Waste Connections. Well, 1 or 2 or 3 of these larger companies, if those were available, and we said, if you're a business in Farmers Branch, here are the 3 waste disposal companies to choose from. You can now go negotiate your own deal with them. But generally, I think they're all going to be competitive. They all have economies of scale because they will be the only ones in town. Their trucks will spend less time going in and out of different towns and more time just coming to ours and staying. There's some savings to be had, I think, for them.
Correct.
In this type of an arrangement. So I really feel like there's a win-win-win here by doing something different than what we're doing today. Am I off base with that thinking?
No, so there's definitely, for us, it would be one phone call. If we had one vendor, it'd be nice to pick up and say, hey, here's the issue at this particular ad location. Stop picking up so early. Tell your driver you gotta wait till this time period. Or there's a spill. Go clean up the spill at this location. It's one phone call for us as a staff.
Right, and we have leverage in those conversations with these vendors. But there would be a transition period where businesses are in a contract.
Right.
And they'd have to let those contracts go through or, and then, so there would be some type of a transition. So without getting too far into that minutia.
There are lots of things to work out. Yes, sir. That's it.
Okay. All right. Very good. Other cities, what do they do?
It varies. I mean, there's some, just like Farmers Branch, where they have the open market system. Residential is usually one vendor. There's some that have franchised out both services together. Usually when you do that, your residents usually pay a little lower rate. And the commercial unfortunately pays a little higher sometimes when how they do their pricing, because usually the cities are more responsive to the residents. The bigger cities, I feel like let's say Houston, I'm not sure exactly what they do. Those may do an RFP for different parts of town. So you get the multiple vendors in there, but the vendor's only responsible for this part of town. That way, if they run into labor issues or something like that, your whole city's not impacted. It's a portion. You can kind of control that a little better.
Right.
Our city's not that big where that should be a problem. But yeah, there's a variety of ways to handle that.
So do most, and you may not even know the answer to this question, do most of these companies take this trash to our Camelot landfill?
Republic does for sure, because they operate it.
Right.
CWD takes our trash there, and they're starting to take some of it. They were going to Denton before, just due to when we got our expansion, we made it pretty clear with the Republic, we wanted to see the price increase on our disposal costs to make revenue. Dallas has always kind of been the floor of the market in this area, but that is a haul to get across the city of Dallas from the north side. So during COVID, a lot of them probably went down there because the traffic was not heavy. Now that things are back to normal, it's as much about location with garbage, because that garbage truck, 3 miles per gallon or whatever your fuel economy may be, you don't
Sure.
have to drive very far.
So the thing that I'd want to make sure that we're cognizant of, and there's, I'm sure, some work to do here, is if we went to 1, 2, 3 vendors, we give businesses a choice, is that going to increase our trash flow to Camelot? If we're able to leverage maybe some costs and maybe residents can have a little bit of savings through this arrangement, does it accelerate our closure?
That is a concern. Yeah, we have a cap that we set for Republic. They control the gate. So Republic determines how much trash comes in. The only way they exceed our cap is if it's for soil, as we've talked about soil deficit before. So they're allowed to go over if it's soil related.
Right.
If all of a sudden we're adding all the commercial waste on Farmers Branch and Republic's not the one, we're going to have a discussion on the landfill side too about that cap we have.
Sure.
So again, there's a lot of moving, but yes, it could very well speed up our rate of closing that landfill.
Okay.
The short answer to your question, yes.
So where I stand on this is I think we need to look into this more and
Okay.
have some more analytics about what it might look like if we went to, I believe that business owners should be given some choice, but even to wrangle this in from 30 to 3 would be a huge improvement.
Understood.
As long as we're not shooting ourselves in the foot with Camelot.
Understood.
That's my thoughts on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman?
Okay, so I'm all for increasing some regulations and enforcements. We don't
Got
need
it.
trash all over the city. Unfortunately, I am not for trade restriction.
I understand.
Small business owner.
I understand.
So, so regulate them. I don't know what we need to do with our ordinances to be able to do that. But yeah, I can't do trade restriction.
Understand.
Thank you very much. Councilman Baird?
I like the idea of just a few vendors from the standpoint that we can, if something goes wrong, we know who did it because we know who serves. And I like the idea of one company taking care of a zone, because now we have a shorter time that they can pick up everything at the same time. We don't have multiple companies coming in. We have less wear and tear on our streets.
Correct.
But I'm with Tina also. So here would be my proposal, and it just dawned on me.
Have at it. Let's hear
It
it.
may be horrible, so we'll just talk it out here. What if we were to split the city into zones, however many zones we decided, 5, 6, 4, I don't know. You know, we could figure that out. And then we vetted however many companies, and then we let the business owners in each zone decide which company they wanted to go with for a period of time. Now, the business owners still have their free choice. Now, they have to agree within their zone. We've got one company doing that entire zone, and it gives us the benefit of faster service. I mean, when I say faster, I mean, it doesn't, you're not hearing trucks on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
Understood.
Friday because you've got 5 different companies. Anyway, I don't know if that's workable or not, but it would, you know, I'm a free market guy, and I don't want us to say, here's your 3 companies you've got to decide between.
Okay.
This way, we'd have probably a longer list to decide from, but we're still getting the benefit of, once the business owners vote and decide who they want, then we know if there's a spill, we make that one call.
I just want to make sure it's a clarifying question.
Sure.
You talk about breaking it up into zones, but then having multiple companies within the zones. Did I understand you
No.
correctly? Okay.
So the zone, all the business owners that would require service have to vote in some way or
Oh,
decide
okay.
which company is
I
going to
gotcha.
serve
Okay.
that vote. Now, I know that's going to be an issue.
Got it.
But to me, that's better than the city saying, here's your 3 choices.
Understood.
And it takes care of the problem of, if you've got 50 businesses in a zone, let's say, then a third of them are going to take A, a third B, a third C, and now we don't know who's responsible for things. We
Got
have
it.
more wear and tear.
So you still get the one vendor, but that'd be I'd have to think through that one long and hard about how to
Sure.
make that work, but
The only
Interesting
issue I
idea.
see is you got to come up with some mechanism to get all the businesses
correct.
to vote on who and.
Right.
But I think if I was a business owner, I would much rather have that, I think, than have the city say, here's who's doing your trash from now on.
Understood.
Here's the 3, pick one of the 3.
Okay.
That's just me.
No, appreciate the idea, and let
Sure.
me think through that one some more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Mayor.
Definitely a challenging issue.
Yes, sir.
And, having sat on P and Z for years, you touched on it when you showed the pictures of, you know, these situations. You know, nowadays, we make extra effort to accommodate dumpster services on these particular properties. Not these particular properties,
Right.
but
New,
newly developed
correct.
properties. So part of the onus I see is, and Councilman Burton stated it as well, that there's some more regulation. And in some of the code efforts that we've done recently with residents is to communicate more with the businesses. Communicate more with the residents. Therefore, it seems to me that that's an arm that we could look at here as well. So I'm in favor of perhaps looking at how the ordinances stack up.
Okay.
We have situations here where in the upper left-hand corner where if, you know, liquid is rolling into the creek, what have you, there's perhaps some, you know, accommodations that could be improved on going forward. We have to figure out what that is. I'm not a big fan of, you know, limiting, you know, businesses operating in the city. I don't know that these proposals are going to potentially increase their efficiencies or, you know, eliminate them from going, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, whatever the day. That's done by ordinance to a degree. And so therefore, I think there's some real challenges in the operational. And I've been a big proponent of making sure that we understand what we're proposing operationally going forward here. And I'll be honest, I'll throw luckily, the conversation, at least on the dais on this topic, has said that maybe we'll offer 2 or 3 vendors, you know, this proposal. At first, when I was hearing this, I was thinking we were looking at potentially, you know, a monopoly aspect of it. And then we're going to put one vendor out,
Right.
and that one vendor.
And that
would
is the
be-
typical model, to be honest with you.
Correct. It is the typical model, and that seems to be, you know, pretty anti-business, anti-business friendly in my
Right.
book. So there's some challenges here on multiple levels, from the zoning, from the placement, from the expectation of the business operating, you know, are they creating more trash? then their dumpster will hold, therefore it becomes, set aside beside it. We've all seen this.
Right.
And therefore, they need some education as well, and perhaps the only education is a citation. And if we're in the friendly mode, as we are, the communication program, that we're trying to raise the bar and not put the onus on the businesses to change. And as we've also talked about, the impacts on our existing landfill, et cetera. Those are all facets that we can't figure out at the moment. There's some projection and some study, but I live just south of, Garden Brook, so I see this all the time. And I see, the pallets that get stacked up there, all of those things. And that's a business to the trash issue that we have to deal with. And therefore, it's the businesses that have a humongous stake in this, in my opinion. And we're making decisions on their behalf without their input, and I feel that's problematic.
Understood. Okay.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of thoughts that I'd like to share, and forgive me if I'm being redundant in any way, but this is an issue I'm torn on because we would essentially be, if we were to go to one franchise, we're essentially restricting trade and imposing this on free business. So I'm torn. I want trucks off the road. I would love to see less trucks on the road because it damages our roadways. I mean, we know some of the negatives. Having one particular company that handles not only our residential but our commercial, I would hope that we would have more leverage with that company for performance if there were issues to ever come up. And I think CWD has been very accommodating in that regard. I'm not sure how we would offer 2 or 3 vendor choices if we were to zone the city. To me, that I'm not sure that that's the fair way to necessarily do it. I do think what would be worthwhile as we continue this discussion is to have a business roundtable and invite businesses to come to a town hall meeting, so to speak, so we could outline this for them. I'm curious as to how much revenue does the city get from the commercial haulers? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, no. I can get your report and get it to council very quickly. I was at the
Okay.
look at the revenue.
And then where does that money go? General fund, landfill, or
General
back
fund,
to your
correct.
department?
No, general fund.
General fund, okay. So in order to do this, if you were to adopt a policy where we were to have one franchise hauler, then we have to establish a start now date. And therein lies a huge challenge because you're talking about commercial businesses who have negotiated contracts with various number of vendors. And so I don't want to do anything that's going to cause an increase in price. So I think we would have to sit down and determine how that's going to be handled with the vendor. And if company XYZ, the selected vendor, the franchise vendor, wants to make this work, then they could go talk to every business and say, City of Farmers Branch has implemented this policy, you've got 16 months to change over, or whenever your current contract ends, whichever is sooner. And the business owner can show them, here's my contract, I'm not paying any more than that, at least for some period of time. So I think we need to give thought and be sensitive to that. There needs to be possibly some escalator clause, but a small one, built into whatever is being proposed by a company. And then could we as a city specify that commercial could only be picked up on Tuesdays and Fridays? Can we set that date with our hauler, or excuse me, with our preferred vendor, if you will, to state when they could run their commercial trucks in the city? And if it was up to a business to say, well, I've got a small dumpster and I've got to have it emptied twice a week, well, then maybe they need to switch to a larger one that would be emptied once a week or something like that. I mean, if the goal is to try to keep trucks off the road, then let's really think about how we go about doing that. And some of these pictures are a prime example because, you know, top left, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 different vendors right there, just in one photo alone. Well, if all those were picked up on the same day, that solves a huge issue for us. So these are things that I'm thinking about, and I just wanted to put that out there for consideration as we have additional discussions on this.
So just real quick to answer a couple of your questions. The way this typically works is the vendor would provide a pricing for a 2-yard dumpster, a 4-yard, 6-yard, 8-yard, 10-yard dumpster, roll-off, compactor service. They give you a flat price per service. So not all operations are the same. We'll take our rec center, for example. Currently gets picked up 2 or 3 times a week. Come summertime, we open the pool and summer funshine's there. It's a 6-day-a-week collection. We got the biggest dump. We can put a bigger one out there, but there's no way the staff's getting stuff into that dumpster because it'd be so tall. So you can only increase your dumpster size so big and still operationally be able to fill that dumpster. So as much as I'd love to be able to tell you, yes, we could tell them on these particular days you can do it, some operations require an everyday collection just because of the type of material and the volume of material they generate. So there are some challenges with what was proposed, but that is the way that's typically done. You have a flat rate that's negotiated. And so if I need twice-a-week service for a 6-yard container, I know what my rate's going to be. But yes, we can continue to have discussions, but that's when I can kind of answer up front and give you a little bit more detail on those particular scenarios.
So maybe moving forward, Councilman Jackson could run lead on this and have this discussion with Shane, then we'll report back when we have some more information.
Yeah, I'll have to talk to our attorneys a little bit about some of the things that were brought up and just talk through a couple of these scenarios. We can give you a response to what's been discussed today as well, but yes.
Yeah. And I'm respectful of free market choice. You want to choose to pay more for your trash, okay. But I would absolutely expect business owners to experience a savings in going to a single vendor or having a choice of 2 or 3 vendors, however that might work. I can't imagine that you're going to pay less for this one truck that's going to come to Farmers Branch and pick up 6 dumpsters versus the company that's coming here and picking up the other 994, right? There has to be a cost savings in there. The other thing that I'd like to think about too is we're getting a 10% amount off the gross revenue, the current commercial vendors. How are we managing that with so many different vendors?
Through our permitting system, we're sending out alerts to all of them once a quarter to, we need to pay. Our ordinance says once a quarter, you got to pay. Okay. So our system generates the reminder, hey, in this many days you need to generate or give us a payment for all that. Okay. And they're supposed to provide backup documentation of what they collected so we can.
So there should be a little bit better or tighter of a system if we were dealing with just 1 or 2 or 3 vendors.
Correct. We've had to add multiple companies to our email list.
Yeah. And the thing that I think council should discuss is, this 10%, does that go toward Camelot? And help to accelerate, the closure costs and such. The discussion for down the road, but a specific purpose, it seems to me, again, to make sense, it aligns with the purpose.
Understood.
Okay, great, thank you.
More discussions to come then. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Shane. Next up is A5, discuss future agenda items. Councilman Merritt?
None at this time. Look forward to Thursday, and we'll have probably several come from that.
Very good. Councilman Jackson?
Yes, Mayor, I do have one. I'd like for staff to prepare a report for council discussion in a rather soon timeframe regarding the Firehouse Theater contract. If my reading is accurate, that contract will renew automatically in June. And I think that we need to review that contract before we're then bound to an automatic renewal.
Very good. Thank you. Councilwoman?
So I'm already on here for the city manager's office to talk about the website searchability and technology issues. David Merritt and I, Councilman Merritt and I met with them this past Tuesday at 3 p.m. So I don't know if you guys want to take that off or if you would like them to come forward and have that discussion with you guys as well. It was very opportunistic.
Okay, well, why don't we leave it on there and
Okay.
we'll put it on for a date to hear the outcome of that. Okay. Councilman Baird? Okay. I have a number of items that I want to do. First of all, I would like to take off my sidewalk discussion item that was listed for to be determined date, but it's the second one on the list, so I'd like to take that off. I'd like to have a discussion possibly in April about the Keenan Cemetery and the columbarium project that I've been researching. Keenan Cemetery discussion. Okay. I would also like to discuss the easing of parking requirements for the East Side Entertainment Overlay District. And then finally, I would like to discuss implementing a policy that anyone serving in a liaison capacity to another organization, they're representing the city, or as a board member of an organization as a result of an appointment by council, needs to make a monthly report to council during the study session. Got that? Okay. Finally, a couple of last things. This is not a future agenda item, but it's involves something that's going to happen in the future, which is the bond town halls. And so we need to have some discussion briefly about how we want those structured. Am I okay to have that?
Future agenda.
Okay. So Jeff Brady has asked, what do we want at these town halls? Whether we need a PowerPoint presentation or what printed materials. Now that there's only 3 bond items, we have, if you'll recall, the boards that have already been made. Now, they will need to be adjusted slightly, which we can do ourselves with just paper to reflect the new amount for each particular item and the impact for average home and seniors. But I also think we need to maybe emphasize some talking points that we listened, we adjusted, we want you to decide. Your voice matters, and make sure people get out to vote, whether they're voting for or against, doesn't matter. We just want people to get out and vote. So our first town hall on this is coming up next Thursday, I believe, the 13th. Is that Tuesday? Tuesday. So we need to give Jeff some direction as to what we want to have to show and tell the story of what led to the bonds being presented the way they are. We have a PowerPoint already that talked about all of them. We'll have to update some slides. But having that PowerPoint and showing it at each of these meetings, granted it would be much more condensed, would that be of benefit?
Yes, but I heard pretty consistently, they want to leave with a piece of paper in their hand.
Okay, so maybe making a flyer also to hand out. Okay,
So Mayor, I would suggest, so we have three items. We have an economic development item, we have a Parks and Rec item, and then we have a Public Works item.
infrastructure.
So each of those directors do a 2 to 3 slide presentation on those items and how the money would be spent. I think that it's important for the public to see our CIP and what we're doing with regard to water and how we're going to incorporate bond money into that, to see branch connection renovations, and then a copy of the presentation. I don't think we need to maybe necessarily print up something separate. Maybe there's a summary page, but
So Jeff, do you think that we can have a brief PowerPoint that's not 20 minutes long, maybe not even 10 minutes long, but something where we can have more of a free discussion, Q&A with our residents, with our council members to answer questions about the 3 initiatives?
Yes, sir, Mayor. Jeff Brady, Director of Communications. Absolutely, we've already got the PowerPoint. We can just dial it back and make some adjustments to it and have it ready to go for Tuesday. Tuesday's the first town hall. And we can have the boards that we had, but with some, just minor adjustments to them, 3 instead of 5. And then also a paper, a handout, a simple flyer, so people will have something. Is that sufficient?
I think so. And I would say bring the district map also, so people will see, because our first one's in Mercer, and some of those people, we got 2 different districts that serve Mercer, but everybody's going to be voting on the SPON, so.
And did I hear, do we want the department heads to make short presentations on each of these proposals? Is that who would be presenting the information? Is that the best format?
I was going to say on this one, usually we've found a lot of success, I'll leave it to my council to decide, is our council to talk about them, but we're there to answer any technical questions. We'll equip you all with the information to where you're well-versed with it, but if they start getting into the nuances, staff is always there to support and answer any technical questions. But I also hate jumping around too much as well, because we go from one staff member to the other staff members, and then I'd probably need to add a 4th, which would be Tammy, to cover any financials, because it's going to blur into those lines as well. But what I'd like to do is create a baseline presentation for y'all to look at and have the council talk through it, and then staff can support in any way. But y'all have shown a strong mastery of our financials when it comes to these topics at town halls.
And that's fine. That's fine. I think the presentation part, 20, 30 minutes tops. We're there to answer questions and interact with residents for another 15, 20 minutes or so, but we're out of there in an hour. Make it a brief.
So to that, we may, since this is over in Mercer, maybe Councilman Roman, Councilwoman Bennett, they take the lead on making most of the presentation. And whoever else is there, we're there to help assist in answering questions or whatnot, but this is their area, so we'll let them do that. And then we can sort of divide it up accordingly for the other 2 meetings also. It gives everybody a chance to sort of be the lead in their area.
Perfect.
If that's acceptable. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
All righty, thank you. I did want to mention, well, I am going to mention it. So Dallas Indoor Pickleball had their grand opening on Friday evening, and I went. They're over at International Place in Spring Valley in an office park. You'd probably never know they were there. They're tucked in the back corner, but oh my gosh, what a success. 16 courts inside there. They're looking for take over more space. The place was packed with people playing pickleball. And of course, being indoors, air conditioned, heated, all of that. So I just wanted to say that was a real surprise, because I didn't know what to expect going over there. It looks really nice on the inside. The guys have done a really good job in putting that together. And so kudos to them for doing that and certainly helping to add value in our city. And then for those who weren't aware, I happened to see this in the morning news. What day was it? Sunday on the 4th. And I always look through the legal notices. I read the obituaries just on the other side, so. But this was a legal notice from the city of Carrollton, and it talked about a block grant of $727,000 that the city received from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. And it listed all the things that that money went to. I thought it was very interesting. We'll have it scanned and sent out so you can see that. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. And that is it for this evening's study session. So thank you all. Thanks, staff, for staying along with us. I'm sorry, but we are now done.